That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine. This is not my setup. This is my friend, my roommate's setup thing going on. But I need to be heading to work, so I just want to get this done real quick. I finished it this morning, drinking coffee. I finished Don Quixote by Miguel Cervantes. And, I mean, it was a great read. I guess I'm giving my overall thoughts on the book as a whole. I'm also going to do a non-spoiler overall thoughts, which will probably be a lot of the same. That'll be a future video. But, before, I don't have too many spoilers. I only have a couple things really to talk about. But Don Quixote is a fantastic episodic adventure. Like, this would really work as like an animated, like sort of like long-running series. Kind of like how that's annoying, but kind of like how Adventure Time is, how it starts off very silly and can get very serious near the end, and that's shut up. But sorry, there's loud gardeners outside. But basically, I didn't always enjoy my time with the story. There were times that I didn't. There were times that I was really into it. It can be really funny. It can be really witty. Sancho Panza and Don Quixote are one of the best duos in fiction. They're really fun to watch. Like, really, truly, and utterly, like, a good time to watch. Read. But you're going to hear stuff. Honestly, I've tried this like 4 times, and I thought they were done. I don't give a damn anymore. I'm just going to fucking go. And whatever. I gotta go. So, I could have done this tomorrow, but whatever. Anyway, it's a fun adventure. What's really sad, though, is that Don Quixote, he tries his hardest to be this virtuous knight, and everybody kind of uses and abuses him through it. And I've said this before in other videos, but, like, even the Duchess and the Duke, they embolden his schizophrenia or whatever this is, this dementia, whatever is going on with him. They abuse the delusion to further their own ends and for their own amusement. And even to keep the lie further, they'll go through these elaborate plots just to keep him going. But then, other people are like, well, he's got to go back home. He's got a family and stuff. He's got a niece and stuff because he doesn't have any kids or wife of his own. And, he reaches the end of the story. He loses to the White Moon Knight, which is just the Knight of Mirrors redressed up, and has to get sent back home. And he finally regains his sanity. He realizes that this has all been a lie. It's all been fake. It's all been for naught. And he seems really sad and empty by the end of it. But he does right by Sancho. He does right by his niece. But I don't know, it feels less colorful, it feels less whole, it feels empty, it feels devoid of what the book started with. And is that the best thing? Was it better for Don Quixote? Was it better for him to be out of his mind, but kind of living life fuller and more truer than how he ends it? Being true to life, but dull, hollow? I don't know. I guess that's for you to decide. But ultimately, that's the story of Don Quixote. He dies of an old age, of illness, of sadness, of heartache, kind of like in Padme in Episode 3 of Star Wars, and that's it. Cervantes ends it in a way where you can never get another one, right? And that's kind of it, So annoying. But that is that. Cervantes with Don Quixote. Don Quixote wrote the modern novel. Like, there weren't really novels prior to Don Quixote. But, if you have never read a book before, or you haven't read a book since high school, I wouldn't say start with this book. I think this is a book you work up to. Because, like, even for me, it still felt like homework at times. It didn't necessarily feel fun at every instant, for me, personally. But I'm happy I read it. I'm glad that I have this done. This was a big bucket list of mine, was to get this done, Moby Dick done, Infinite Jest done, many other books, but this was one of them, and I'm happy I have it out of the way. I enjoyed my time with it overall. And I think you really have to love literature if you want to get into this book. That's not to be pretentious. It's just me like, if you read for fun, like, and you just want to have a good time after you've had a hard day at work, I wouldn't say, oh, let's go to Don Quixote. I mean, maybe, right? Like, people read Shakespeare for the fun of it, and like, I certainly do. Like, I love Shakespeare. But I also think you have to be in a certain place in life. I know when I was in high school, and this doesn't account for everybody, some people love their English class and are in high school, middle school, right? But when I was in high school, I really hated Shakespeare, and I would have despised Cervantes' book if I had read this back in high school. But as an adult, I could come and appreciate what it's trying to do. In the same way with Shakespeare or Dickens or Austen, so on and so forth with these writers that I probably wouldn't have appreciated at certain times. Certain books reach you at the correct time. So whenever you feel that is, if this has felt like something you want to check out, then you should. I feel like you will get something out of it. But it certainly isn't for everyone. I think it is undeniable that it is an important work of literature as a whole, and that next to Shakespeare, it stacks up as an important book of literature that if you are interested in literature, it should be read. Beyond just reading fantasy or sci-fi or whatever, like if you are like, I want to read some of the greatest works of fiction of all time, whether or not you personally agree that this work actually is one of the greatest works of literature of all time, it is something that should be read. Just in terms of like, I don't know how much people actually have these conversations in 2026, but if you're having conversations about literature and you're talking about some of the greats, Don Quixote should come up. And you should be able to form an opinion one way or the other, whether you like this novel or not. But either opinion is valid so long as you've actually read the text, So, and I think that could spark some interesting discussion. So absolutely, I think Don Quixote is a worthy read. You just have to be at the right time and place to at least appreciate it, if not enjoy it. So that's pretty much it for my non-spoiler thoughts. I love Don Quixote. I think it's worth your time. I gotta get going to work. I have very small spoilers if you don't want any. There's a door, and I will do a non-spoiler overall thoughts of the book as a whole next time. There's a bout of love for Don Quixote, but Don Quixote is committed to his Tobosa Dulcinea. And so he, of course, is like, no. Getting to see Sancho and as governor and his antics was actually probably my favorite part of book 2, because he's actually a fairly decent ruler, all things considered. Don Quixote gets attacked by a cat and is, left kind of immobilized for a bit. There's a plot to kill the Duke and Sancho. This is actually a pretty dark part of the book. Don Quixote and a woman get assaulted. And I don't know if it tried to imply something darker with the woman, but at the very least, they both got physically hurt. Panza, at his toughest in this entire book, there's basically this rich kid who gets away with murder. Not murder, but he does a lot of shit that he shouldn't be doing. And he's like, well, my dad's just going to bail me out. My dad's one of the richest men in town. And Sancho's like, yeah, that's amazing, but I'm the governor. Is my word not law here? If you want to keep testing me, I will put you in jail. I don't give a damn what your father says. If you try to bribe the guard, I'll pay him more. You are not getting out of this. You will respect the law or you will face the crime. This is your one and only warning. Do not mess with me. And I was like, all right, Sancho, you may be tougher than Don Quixote. I will not mess with you. I'm sorry. It was incredible. Probably one of my favorite parts of the book. But then Sancho falls into a pit. And that's the end, because he doesn't want to be governor anymore. It's too stressful. And guess what? Don Quixote saves him. It's wonderful. And by the end, like I said, the Knight of the White Moon, which is just formerly the Knight of Mirrors, finally defeats Don Quixote and tells him he must return home and never be a knight anymore. And like I said, he dies on his deathbed, sad. But yep, you're right. None of this is true. I was dumb. Knight errants don't exist. Virtue doesn't exist. I was dumb. I'm sorry. Let me give all my money to Sancho Panza and my niece, and I'm dumb and stupid for ever believing in hope, and hereby I'm dead. It's just really sad. And, people are like, don't you want to go on one more adventure? Sancho Panza's begging him. Sancho knows it's all delusion, it's all dumb, but he loves, Don Quixote. He stood by his side. Not because he believed that any of this stuff was really true, but because I think deep inside, Sancho admired the desire, the innocent virtue, the genuine urge and will to be kind, to be good, in a world that doesn't give a shit about it. Sorry for the strong language, but all he wanted to do is do what's right. And he may have been delusional, and he may have got himself into scenarios he shouldn't have gotten himself in. Got himself in fights with the law, got himself in fights with this and that, because he wasn't mentally completely well. But amidst that delusion, amidst that craziness, there was this pervasive, consistent notion of rightness and truthfulness within all of that, muddled area there. It was a man trying to do right by other people and trying to reinvigorate that desire and will within other people. And people laughed at him for it and scoffed him for it. But Sancho, despite the delusion, despite how many times Don Quixote pissed him off, he willingly stood by his side because he admired the virtue. He admired the ideal. At least I think so. And I love that about Sancho. The man whipped himself in the back for Don Quixote. I mean, he was also bargained for some money, to be fair. But he knew full well that the Dulcinea of Toboso was never going to be, cured of this enchantment, because there's no such thing. But he was willing to endure whipping himself for Don Quixote because he loves him. At the end of it all, their friendship is about love. And any duo in fiction, I said Mordecai and Rigby. Why was that my first thought? But sure, Mordecai and Rigby, Adventure Time, Finn and Jay, Donkey and Shrek. Actually, I think that's probably on purpose. Batman and Robin. Pick your poison. All of that, in some way, shape, or form, is a template from this. And I'm really glad I read this. And I think if you're in the right headspace, you will really be glad you read this too. So I do recommend Don Quixote. I think it's a phenomenal work. Did I always personally enjoy my time every second of every minute reading it? I won't lie to you. Some people will tell you that. I didn't. There were parts where I was bored. There was parts where I was kind of like, this is going on a long time. But overall, as a complete work, I am so happy I read it. Am I going to be chomping at the bit to immediately read this again? Probably not. But give it like another 5 to 10 years, and I probably will be itching to read The Adventures of Don Quixote and Sancho Panza again, because they're so pervasive and endearing in my heart. Don Quixote, Sancho Panza, they feel like my friends in my heart. And that's what great literature does. It sticks with you, Same way that Hamlet is a part of me, and I will never let go of Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. It is ingrained within my soul now. I will come back to that play time and time and time again, in the same way with Macbeth. Maybe less so with The Merchant of Venice, besides the scenes of Al Pacino, because it was okay. Shylock's cool. But Hamlet, Macbeth, soon I'll get to King Lear and Othello. Like, these are the things that will stay with us, as they should, because that's what literature does. We all pass away, we all grind to dust, but the things that remain, the things that sustain, is literature, art. Cervantes is as old as Shakespeare. I think they died around the same time, but they endure because what they wrote was so pure and true to the human condition. I think Cervantes is more outward in how we should treat each other. I mean, one amazing thing that I forgot to mention, I gotta go to work, I'm gonna be late, but you know what, screw it, Cervantes is more important. But the one thing you notice with Cervantes, this is different from Shakespeare. Shakespeare is very inward. Hamlet doesn't really give a damn what other people think, but we are so invested and care so heavily about what he has to say. All right, we love listening to Hamlet and his soliloquies and what he thinks of the world, because he is so fascinating of a character. There is no other character in fiction or real life. I believe Harold Bloom absolutely when he says that outside of the Bible and Jesus Christ of Nazareth, whether true or false, doesn't matter your perspective. But outside of that story, Hamlet is there among the literary works of fiction that transcends time and that people still talk about to this day or inspired by to this day. Any story you see is in some way, shape, or form has been influenced by Hamlet. But in the same way, Shakespeare is very inward. Cervantes is very outward. The thing that is amazing about Sancho Panza and Don Quixote is throughout the entire story, they continue to clash back and forth. They continue to talk to each other, and they evolve, they change throughout the story by talking to each other. So while Shakespeare is inward, and there's change inward as they talk to themselves, these characters that he makes, Cervantes' characters change with each other as they discuss things with each other and experience things with each other. And I love that. So Cervantes, Shakespeare, Chaucer, Dickens, Jane Austen, these are the things that I plan on reading all of. I know I've read Dickens in the past, and of course everyone's seen A Christmas Carol growing up. You know, I've also seen Scrooged with Bill Murray, which is phenomenal. I'm sure I read Pride and Prejudice at some point, watched a film at some point. But, you know, these works endure for a reason. And I love being able to read something from years and years and years ago and having it still be as resonant as it is today. You know, Cervantes was the 1600s. And yet it endures. What will you allow to endure in your heart? Maybe Don Quixote will. Until next time, guys, thank you all so much for watching. I enjoyed Don Quixote a ton. I think you will too. And as I head off to work today, and as you go about your business, whatever it is you're doing, whether it be morning, night, evening, afternoon, watch out for windmills and be full of virtue. Bye-bye.